and talk a little bit about the tragic events of last week on Yonge Street. I'm going to tell you one thing that's very difficult after any major event is to talk to any first responders at length, because they all want to, they work as a team. And nobody wants to be pointed out as an individual. So I've asked the members of Toronto Paramedic Services to join me right now to speak for their team, but they all played roles in last week's tragedy. I'd like to welcome this morning John Shirley, who is an emergency medical dispatcher, Chris Rotolo, paramedic, one of the first medics on the scene, comes from a line of paramedics, by the way, know your dad, David Lavoski, who is peer support, which is equally as important to what these two gentlemen had done last week. Good morning. Let's begin with you, John, because you were one of the first people. You were working in the radio room at the time. You were one of the first to know something was up. What was it like?
That's correct. I was actually one of the first call takers to take the call as well. My role that day was as an educator. I had somebody with me. And as we took the call, we realized there was a lot more to this than just your simple pedestrian struck. After we had finished the call, I stood up and looked for the supervisor to see if there was a TAC desk being set up, and lo and behold, that was me.
So just for people, when you have a major incident, you set up a TAC desk.
That's correct.
Tactical desk.
That's right.
All right. And Chris, you happen to have been among the first to respond. You were in the area, were you at the station, were you driving at the time?
We just left, actually downtown, so we just left Mount Sinai, and we heard all the commotion going down. So we made ourselves available and went up Avenue Road and responded to the call.
When you first got there, what is your thought? Because again, this comes across, as John said, as a pedestrian struck.
Yep.
And then another pedestrian struck, and then it stretches for such a long. What is your first response? How do you triage that?
Yeah, you know, it was surreal, you know, responding to the call and getting all that information that there was multiple struck here and there was multiple struck there, and we had such a large scene to deal with. And, you know, on the way, I wasn't really sure what was happening. Just all of a sudden we had all these people hit by cars everywhere, and they needed screaming for ambulances left, right, and center. So really, you know, you see these things on the news, but I never thought I'd be in the driver's seat responding to one of these things in my career. So when we arrived on the scene, I guess the goal of the initial crew, and I commend them, they did an excellent job triaging and, you know, setting up a TAC desk and incident command. And everybody really stepped up to the plate and did an excellent job. And, you know, it's everybody gave 110% that day, from the paramedics to the dispatchers to the fire department, the police officers, York paramedics, the police, everybody, even the bystanders on the street, everybody was there to help out. And so it ran really smoothly from a department standpoint, and everybody did an excellent job and did the best we could for those patients.
I mean, when you have a multi-victim incident, triaging isn't as easy as it sounds, because what has to be done is you have to assess who has life-threatening injuries, who needs to be sent to hospital now, who needs to be worked on here, who can wait until later, all at the same time working on a patient. So that's
absolutely
tough.
Yeah, those crews did an excellent job, and yeah, difficult decisions had to be made, and I commend my colleagues.
David's job now with peer support, and your job comes after they have finished their job, and that is how is Chris and how is David reacting? How do they feel after this incident? And this is equally as important to what they do. Tell me about the peer support and what's needed after this incident.
Right. Everyone on the peer support team is either a paramedic or a dispatcher, so we're doing our jobs and then notified of an incident and then being sort of deployed to make sure people are getting looked after and cared for after the incident. So I was off duty that day, but I knew about the call because my little peer support phone was going off and my colleagues were saying there's a major incident happening in the northeast of Toronto. And so then I turned on the news and saw what was going on. So everyone on the phone was basically saying, I'm available, where can I go, where do you need me? And we all sort of went off to the hospitals and provided our help there.
You have an important message too for the witnesses and the bystanders, because police and fire also have their own peer support groups. What do you say to the civilians on scene who may have even helped out or just watched? What's your message to them?
My message to them is not to be scared to seeking some help for their own mental health. Don't worry about the stigma. There's a lot of self-stigma associated with seeking help for mental health reasons, and not to worry about that. So try not to deal with it on your own. Talk to someone, talk to a close friend, family member, talk to even your family doctor and say, hey, I witnessed this, I just want to talk about it. And that, because you're not sure if you've been affected or not a lot of the times. When you do find out, it could be possibly too late and you've developed something like PTSD. So it's a good idea to seek help, and early recognition of those symptoms can mean you can treat it faster and get back into a healthy state.
All right. Thank you for what you did. Thank you.